Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Early Warning Systems to Support Freshman Success. Today's webinar will feature a presentation by Steve Fisher and Ryan Patt, who are assistant principals in the District of Waukesha. I'm Heidi Erstad. I'm a Regional Technical Assistance Coordinator with the RTI Center. At the RTI Center, we have a vision for success for all Wisconsin students in life. And the way we do that is through our mission of building the capacity of schools to develop and sustain a culturally responsive multi-level system of support to ensure the success of all students. And one of the things we do that through trainings and through technical assistance. And one of the things we'd like to do is to get the word out about great work that's going on around the state. And we do that through some webinars. And today we're excited that Waukesha has agreed to tell their story. In today's webinar, we're going to briefly share some aspects of what is an early warning system, just a brief introduction to that. Then we're going to hand it over to Steve and Ryan to talk about in Waukesha how they've used that concept to more effectively and proactively support this freshman in their school. And then we're going to leave you with some resources to extend learning about the early warning system. You should know that this is being recorded, and we will give you access to where you can access that link for the recording if you want to share this or listen to it at another time. We have about 40 people signed up for today's webinar, so we're going to make this a listen-in session. Your microphones have been muted. But you do have access to a question box, and we encourage you to use that question box to ask questions that are either both technical or content related. There's also a handout screen or a handout tab on your control panel, and the PowerPoint that I'm sharing with you right now and a list of resources, including a link to Waukesha's presentation, is on that second handout, the resource handout. We also have one request. In the question box, we ask if you're attending with a group of people, not just one person sitting around the computer, that you would just type in the name of the district, the full name, and the title of the person that's sitting with you. We collect that roster data as part of a federal grant requirement. So I'm just going to give us just a few seconds to do that. All right, so let's just talk a little bit about what an early warning system is before we hand it over to Ryan and Steve. An early warning system is pretty much what it sounds like. It's putting into place some systematic practices and processes to let us know who's potentially at risk of not succeeding or graduating from school so that we can take action right away. It also helps us understand not only who that is, but what type of support those students need to be successful. And because early warning systems are systematic, we can start to use some of the data to look at patterns and to check our school climate so that it can help us to inform our system level practice, including looking for any types of disproportionality that might be in our system. The cool thing about early warning systems is that they rely on existing data. So it's not asking us to collect any data that we don't already have or take up valuable instructional time with additional testing. And the existing data that it uses really relies on what we call our ABCs. So we look at some attendance indicators. We also look at behavior indicators. And the research also says that we want to make sure that we're looking at some academic or coursework data as well. The key active ingredient to an early warning system are what we call these risk indicators. So researchers who've developed early warning systems have looked at a myriad of indicators across school systems and have run statistical analysis on those and have identified specific indicators that are predictive of whether or not students will be successful and graduate from high school. And those are the indicators that you see on the screen here. There's research that shows that if students are absent anytime 10% of their first 20 days of school, or within a grading period, 10% of a grading period, or 10% annually, that's an indicator that those students have been shown through studies to not be successful and finish and graduate from high school. You can also see that course fails of core courses as well, and grade point average as well as credits earned. So that's the C part of the ABCs. And finally, the behavior part. On the left, what you see are the national data. So that has been identified through key researchers like Richard Balfans. What you see on the right-hand side are more localized data. So researchers in Wisconsin, like Gerald Knowles, has worked on what that data says about Wisconsin students. So you can see that those thresholds help us to understand what those predictors are, so that we can start to flag those students early on, again, so that we can intervene. So when we create an early warning system, and there's lots of places to get some free tools, and we'll see how Waukesha developed their own tool. And again, we'll share some places where you can get early warning systems to use. One aspect of them is that they flag the students who meet that threshold. So in this example here, you can see that a number of students, a school had identified an incoming risk indicator that could be based on perhaps WKCE or Badger exam score or a MAP score, so that those are students that they want to make sure that when those students are coming into high school, for instance, they want to think about what do we have in place to support them right from the start. So an early warning system helps us to look at our data systematically by using the indicators that research has shown is predictive of students who may be at risk. And again, we can also use this at a system level, noting where we might have some disproportionality in our system. So I'm just going to pause there for a second to see if you have any just general questions about early warning systems. All right, seeing no questions, I'm going to hand this over to our co-presenters today. We have Steve Fisher and Ryan Patt from Waukesha School District. They're both assistant principals there, one at Waukesha South and one at Waukesha West. And again, we'll share their presentation with you later on today. So I'm going to hand that over to them.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for sharing some of your time with us today. Ryan and I are excited to share our story and hope that we can create a broader network and connections with you that can mutually assist each other in better meeting the needs of all of our students. We'd like to share our story really answering 4 questions. The first question is, what were we doing? Number 2, why did we want to change? Number 3, what is our early warning data dashboard and how does it work? And then finally, number 4, what are the results that we've had? So we'd like to start out just by sharing our story and what we were doing. When Ryan and I worked together here at Waukesha West, we would have an SST meeting, a student services team meeting, that would meet for about an hour and a half or 2 hours weekly. And ultimately, we'd put a list together of kids that we needed to be aware of or who's popping. And by and large, it was just in case they became an academic problem. And really, we came to the table with a lot of anecdotal evidence and anecdotal data. And ultimately, unfortunately, it felt a little bit like a gossip session. Let's hear what's going on with kids. And then there was really not a lot of follow-through. Really felt reactive, almost like we were waiting for students to have a problem and then, randomly bringing them up if we were aware of what was happening. So ultimately, it felt like damage control. We ended up putting Band-Aids on problems and really not finding a solution to the cause of those problems. We had limited follow-through. We were trying to solve in the moment, but we were catching students that were already in need of Tier 2 intervention. And then there was limited follow-through on progress monitoring. I'm sure like you guys, we find as APs, we're caught up in the moment and life finds a way to drag us away. We've got a student acting up, we're pulled away, and the next thing you know, we've kind of forgotten about that. And then finally, because we've got a large school, 1,200-1,300 students, as we were waiting to talk about our students, there ended up being a lot of side conversations because there was 12, 13, 14 people at the table, and as we're waiting 30 minutes to talk about our kids with our psychologist and social worker, we got off task a little bit, and that was unfortunate. So we really felt the need to change. It was painful. It really ended up being a waste of a lot of people's time with really less than ideal student results. So we came up with 4 goals. The first goal was we need to keep students from going to Tier 2. We've got to get out in front of the problem. We've got to identify those kids before they become a problem so that we can really effectively use a really good Tier 1 program. So that means we needed to really audit our interventions. We needed to identify the interventions that currently existed within our building, create a menu of those in terms of what those could help us attack, whether it was numeracy or literacy or behaviorally. And then we had to create new inventions for the holes that we identified after doing that audit. The next thing we wanted to do was to use real-time data and notification. We wanted the data to be auto-populated as soon as it became available, and we wanted the entire team to be emailed with specific student names so that it wasn't one person's responsibility to keep track of all of our students. It was the big team's responsibility, and if I was caught up, Ryan then was able to hold me accountable to make sure that I had time in my day to meet and talk about students to try to meet them where they were at. Finally, wanted to create that accountability and track the progress, not only for academics but behavior improvement, and really progress monitor that and make sure that there's growth, and if there's not, to try something different after 4 to 6 weeks rather than to keep them in something for a semester or a year and wonder why they didn't continue to improve. And then the final thing that we really wanted to do was streamline the timeline. Who needs to be at the table? If we're going to be meeting for an hour and a half, 2 hours, does everyone need to be there during that time, or can we honor everybody else's time in a better way if they don't need to be there? We needed to keep it focused. We needed to really let everyone know what their role is, who was responsible for what in terms of not only bringing things to the table, but in terms of who was responsible for following up with that student and the subsequent progress monitoring. We wanted to identify root cause and solve problems rather than continue to put Band-Aids on things. And so what we found is it was really easier for us to meet in smaller groups between 3 and 4 members than it was to meet in groups of 12 or 14. And we wanted to start small to ensure fidelity. So we really started with our freshmen instead of trying to grab freshmen through seniors. So what we did is we created an early warning data dashboard out of a Google spreadsheet that imports identified data that we have for those students. And I had our math coordinator write a script for that so that as soon as the data was put into the dashboard, it automatically identified the students who had hit a threshold and notified all of the RTI people that we needed to meet about those. And we used the following data. We took a look at the MAP reading scores from fall, winter, and spring. We looked at quarterly GPAs, first, second, third, fourth quarter. MAP scores from, again, fall, winter, and spring. Then we took a look at periods of attendance missed as well as periods of tardiness missed. And we looked at periods because we've got a different day. We've got an 8-day period on Monday with a drop 2 schedule Tuesday through Friday. So we wanted to take a look at that 10% that Heidi was talking about earlier, and how did that 10% fit within our schedule. So we really thought that that was best done through periods and attendance. At that point, I had the good fortune to be moved over to Waukesha South and take over their engineering and health academy. So Ryan continued with this work, and I want to give him an opportunity to talk about the results they've seen since they've implemented this dashboard.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Just the screen in front of you, dashboard version 1, just kind of to backtrack a little bit as we're telling our story. This really wasn't a a quick fix or a quick implementation. We spent some time through CISA 1 with the RTI network, really looking at our RTI systems, and out of that came the key people at the table to say, okay, we need to put a system in place. Really the first version that we got was, as we're doing today, is through sharing, came from Arrowhead High School. It was really a large dashboard, a lot of data, and they used kind of a red light, green light system, and they were fortunate enough to share that with us. But it was a lot of big data. It seemed a little clunky, and I think the big question is who will enter all of the data, which specific data, how will it go in quickly and easily, depending on the size of the school. I know that there's a limited number of people, so that was a big question. Out of those conversations, we had a little bit of a lull and took about a year, and when Steve came on board, we got back together to talk about a dashboard that could be more user-friendly and modify our time in a positive way. And as I just had it up on the screen before, it's customized for West High School, but it utilizes the factors that Heidi talked about. It's efficient, and we put people in place to be able to add the data in a timely manner and to keep us moving forward in an updated manner to focus on the kids that we need to focus on. So you saw the dashboard. I'm going to dive into really the critical piece that Steve talked about, which is the email that we received. So what we do is, you saw up there a Flubaroo update. We basically run a script in the data, and that script generates an email to the key stakeholders or the data teams that Steve was talking about, the small 3 to 4 person data teams. And here's an example of that email. So once we run it, the data is entered. We know what data are at-risk indicators. I blocked the names out for security purposes. And you can see that this is what gets emailed to these individuals. This is our student services team along with the associate principals. And we sit down, we take it by alpha and look at each one of these students. And then everybody has a role that comes to the table. So our school psychologist grabs the CUME file. The associate principal, myself, is responsible for data and assessment data. And the school counselor really has other anecdotal data from relationships and grades that they bring to the table. So this email system alone for notification and who we need to focus on has been huge for the entire system to help us stay focused and on task, as people talked about. Sorry, as Steve talked about. So just to give you an idea of how we evolved a little bit for our story, our SST team is that large team where Steve talked about how we were reactive, and those conversations kind of went to the side, and we brought the dashboard into our SST team as well. And we kind of have the RTI team and our SST team. We have the large version, and then we come back to the smaller version. And I just want to show you quickly kind of where we were before. As with we were big and clunky with our first version of the dashboard, and this was kind of the first version of how we talked about kids. You can see it's just kind of a Google sheet, and I put old school notes. That's just an example to show you. But now this is really what we currently use. We have a Google form that we can sort very clearly. It has the indicators of why they made it to either through the RTI dashboard or through our SST team. You have the people that are responsible. We have specific notes that are responsible, and then we follow up weekly with the accountability piece. This is person responsible for initiating the plan. This is the accountability piece that we were missing before. When I come back every week, I have an accountability on this sheet that we go back and look at what are we doing, what happened, who made the contacts. And this is the personalized piece as well. When we sit down either through the RTI dashboard or through our SST team, all these notes and different pieces are what drives us to customize our students' needs. And this is where we go back to look at our continuum of services and how we're going to offer that and what we're going to do. So this has been a critical piece for us in keeping track of what we're going to do and to help us as we move forward to make our process even better. I've kind of been talking about that a little bit, just an upgrade or update. Meetings are time-bound, focused, action-oriented, accountability. Steve talked about that. They're efficient. Because of that efficiency, and I just mentioned continuum of services, we're able to then, in our groups, really take a look at how we meet our students' needs. As a system, wholesale, we want to adjust to our populations as they come into our different freshmen as they come in our door, how we use data, and then how we integrate it. So all these pieces are things that, because of our system, allow us to dive into each portion of that system. With the system in place, you can then look at the portion. So here's kind of the update of some things that we do. So how we've evolved over time since it's been in there is we have an AO time, which is a Tier 1 and a Tier 2. It's got just-in-time support. We have a large peer tutoring program that happens. That peer tutoring goes along with a freshman mentoring program that welcomes our students in. That's really a powerful component for us. We're actually going to have a national camera crew in here making a video of our students and their interactions for our mentor team, for our student mentors and peer mentoring, because we do such a great job, and that feeds into our freshman culture. And during AO time, they also can, on Tier 2, students get just-in-time help. They can jump up to Tier 2 and get specific targeted intervention in math, small groups in math and reading. We also have eAchieve, an online piece, so we evolved this year with all of our time saved from our process as we're getting better. And we have a lot of, unfortunately, some failures or lack of work that's being done in our online courses. So that's a concern for us. So we've brought eAchieve into the fold, which is our online school through the School District of Waukesha, and started to reach out to those kids to help them move along in their process. And then this year we also added really a homework completion or just-in-time help called the Quest Room. It's got expectations for students and their work, and it really helps our students catch up in their just-in-time work that needs to be done. We've also added a strategic reading class. We've sectioned our Algebra A and Algebra B into a slower pace. And we've taken a look at our special education program and really streamlined that to have a continuum of services that is focused on targeted intervention. It's focused on social behavioral intervention. We got away from guided study halls for our special education students and focused on interventions. We have a lot of team teaching that is occurring. All these things happen because of the conversations we have around our RTI system and the parts of that system. Because we have such a good, easy way to target students, all these other things continue to get added or developed on a year-to-year basis because of our system. So, simple truth, we dive into the whole student and look to make adjustments for success. Getting back to the sheet I showed you that keeps track of what we do for kids, everything is on the table. And we really try to hold to that, and we customize it as needed to make sure our kids have success. Small adjustments can make a huge impact, and that's the power of the wide net. I think Steve would agree. We started conversations in those small data teams that never occurred previously. And those little tweaks and small conversations have a huge impact. We're accountable to the group. The discount double check. We also look at special education students, anybody that comes up on that dashboard. And sometimes our kids are okay on the dashboard. We have put them into the places they need to be. We always double check to make sure it's the right place every 4 to 6 weeks, as Steve said. And we're always discussing and tweaking our continuum to meet students' needs. And we're not perfect. We have more work to do. We're going to continue to look at it. This past year, again, we took something from Alaska, who I know does a great job, and we targeted our students who were at risk with their attendance and made summer home visits. And following up with the 13 students that we visited, 11 of them were on free or reduced lunch, and all 11 of them met their growth target in MAP for the year. So that was just a small sample of tweaking that. So I think I talked about all these pieces. I'm kind of just doing it once again, but technology has been great. I mean, just the little tweaks with being able to use Google, the Google platform has made a huge world of difference for us in our time and efficiency. So just to share with you a little bit of data, this is recent data. This is our spring map data here at Waukesha West High School. I just want to run that down very quickly for you to take a look at. This is our growth from fall of this year, so students received at West High School in the fall, to the spring where we just finished map testing. I don't have our special education students on there. I just didn't put them on there, but they grew about 57% of them met their growth targets. So what I have here on this side is these are the percentiles that they're in. So the 99th percentile of students, we had 6 students in there. 5 of 6 students grew or met their growth target in math by an average of 7.6 points. That's pretty good stuff because it's really, when you're already high, it's difficult to go higher on your scores. So that was pretty good stuff. 90%, you can see about 50% of our kids move forward. The 80th percentile, 72%, 70th percentile, 57%, and then our 50th percentile below, which is really a focus for us. We only had about 34% of kids move. You had 8 to 9 more kids there, and you're almost at 50%, which is a good place where we want to go every single year, but we have work to do. Now, they did grow an average of 5 points, so we had pretty good growth, but when students have lower scores, they do have larger growth targets. So that's an area of focus for us, but we're very close on some of these students. I broke it out also to talk about, I know again Heidi talked about an equitable system. If you take a look at our free and reduced lunch students, and I talked about those 11 students that we visited, we are seeing in reading some great growth, almost 6.4 points and 67% of those students. That's a huge win for us, and I think a compliment to our system. Math is the exact same. It is not a typo. You can see the average growth as well. So we've got some cool stuff going on. If you take a look at some of our demographic breakouts, our Hispanic students are behind our white students, but those are numbers, again, that we can continue to work through our system and have on par and have equity. And our African American students, great growth, not as much growth overall, but 5 to 7 did meet their growth target. So you can kind of see all that. Those were some of the highlights. I know our math scores were really, really excellent. So we're fortunate to have great kids that do great things, but we have a lot of work to do as well, as you can see. So with that, that finishes our conversation. So I guess at this time, it's question time. So we're here to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Ryan and Steve. I'm going to suggest that for those who have questions, you can either use the question box to type in your question, or if you'd like to just ask it out loud, just use that little hand raise and we'll unmute you so that you can ask your question. We did get a question about version 1 versus version 2. It says, are you sharing version 2 like Arrowhead shared version 1 with you? I'm hoping that makes sense to you.
Yeah, we shared the growth. We wanted to see that it was a journey. It wasn't something that we magically came up with, and we wanted to share the people who shared with us and give them credit. So we wanted to reach out, shout out to Arrowhead non-Alaska and thank them for sharing with us. What we're sharing with you is that version 2. We're sharing with you the latest and greatest, and we'd be more than happy to engage in some detailed conversations if people want to give us a shout and really get in and get dirty with it.
Yeah, I mean, that version is shared like it was shared with us. Feel free to take it, copy it, and do whatever it is you want to do with it. There was a couple tabs on the bottom of it as well that was some of our thinking. There were sophomores that we haven't really dove into yet. There is also a special education piece that I really want to use a modified version of this for special education indicators, so we can have our special ed case managers dive into data on their kids specifically. I know they have lots of progress monitoring tools and they do a good job, but they have a lot of students on their caseloads, and sometimes I want to have a good and easy way for them to sit down and discuss their students just like we do it here. So that's what that tab on the bottom is. But yes, that version is for you to take, copy, and you can call us if you have questions about what we did or how we did it, and we can help you to the best of our ability.
And I think there's also a tab on the bottom that says cut scores. On that particular tab, it talks and shows, what RIT level that we used for our different cut scores for reading and math, GPA, attendance and tardies. And again, with attendance and tardies, remember we're talking about periods there, not days. And again, that's all customizable. So depending upon your building and the needs of your building, you can change those numbers to fit the needs to make that first run or that first year something that's attainable. I I think reflecting back, that was also another thing that we did really well, is that we focused on the freshmen so that we knew that we could handle that, learn from that, make some adjustments from that, and move forward.
Also, the dashboard, I guess we never really explained how it works. Ultimately, each of those indicators give a point value. The difference is they're not cut scores, they're ranges. So Steve developed it, did a great job of basically saying if you receive this certain GPA, a 2.5 to a 2.1, and I don't know the specifics, they're on there in the cut score. Oh, there they are. You receive a certain point value. If you go to the next lower range, you receive a higher point value, and all those indicators add up to a total. That total, then, there might be different indicators where the student's at risk, but not all indicators. Then that total flags that student, and we can take a look at which areas they were indicated in and see where we're at. So that's how I think it's ingenious on Steve's part to talk about those levels and the different point values to ensure more accuracy of which students are at risk in which areas. You can see this is that dashboard. Obviously, I took all the names and IDs out, but you can see this, basically everything goes across. So here is the different scores that were put in there based on the indicators of students we enter in the big data, and then it basically provides a number, 0, 1, or 3. And as we enter all this down, it calculates across. Sorry about that. And again, because there's no names, the formula is not working. And then you can see this student has some indicators in reading map. Then here's the periods missed. Those are hours, as Steve said, not days. And that's our attendance cut. Then we also have tardiness separate from attendance as an indicator. And then you can see the total benchmark. So everything comes across, and these are the total points. And when it is above a total of 5 points, you are generated in an email, and we take a look at you for our data team conversations. Here's the cuts Steve was talking about. So I click on that tab. Here's what he was talking about.
So you can see the lookup. Here's the RIT score. This is for reading. So if you got a 227 or greater, you wouldn't receive any points. Between a 220 and a 227, you'd get a 1. Same thing with a 3. Anything below 220, you'd get 3 points for that. And that's what we use for reading, for GPA, for math, map, for attendance, and for tardiness. And again, our benchmark that it indicated a student was for 5. It was, pretty quick out of the gates right away, but it was great, and we wanted it to be that way because we wanted it to be an early warning system. We wanted to get to those kids and again, try to find the cause of the problem on the front end so that we had the year to really help that student rather than be reactionary and put Band-Aids on problems as we found them in the third quarter.
And on the bottom, what you'll see here is the special education piece I discussed earlier. This is that. So some of the grades in their courses were concerned. So we were actually going to use these point values for specific grades when we enter data for our special education students. So if they received a D in an English or a math class, it would give a 1. An F or an IE for us, that's insufficient evidence. And then we talked about intervention progress. So how are they progressing their intervention? Just a yes or a no. Are they moving the way that they should towards their goals? Would add a point, and IEP goals. So this was just the thinking of that to give you what that is. You can see our sophomores, and then you can see the special education piece as well that I'm looking to continue to develop with our special education coordinator. It just has more of those indicators that were shown in the cut scores, the grades, and the goals. So that is the dashboard, I guess, in a nutshell.
Can you also address, we have a couple of people are asking about who enters the data. So can you address how that decision was made?
Initially, when we started out, we had a guidance counselor aide that would manually put those in. She'd go and look at all of them and put them in. Fortunately, this year, with me going over to South and South gaining interest in this, and we also captured our other sister school, Waukesha North, is looking at this. We had a data person down in our central office that created a script at central office through our Infinite Campus that gathers that information during key periods of time when MAP scores are coming through and automatically populates that in. And then our attendance secretary runs, what's it called?
A report.
She runs a report. Yes, it's a specific report out of Infinite Campus that gives us all the kids from the freshmen in alphabetical order that she simply copies and pastes and puts into the attendance periods and the tardiness periods. So it's really efficient for her. It doesn't take her very long to do that. And then again, once those are changed, the script automatically calculates for all the students, identifies those students, and sends that email out to the team.
We have another question that's a little, that's more about ownership and buy-in. So can you go back in time and think about how you started this conversation and what advice you would give to other principals out there who are looking to move to an early warning system and have their staff come along in that journey?
Well, it really started with just kind of an interest of we need to do something better and different for our kids. All the things that Steve was describing were occurring, and so I again was fortunate enough to get a team together with student services, a couple counselors, and then our school psychologists at the time to attend the RTI network training, basically for an RTI systems process. We went through the audit. We asked critical questions. We came back to the table and said, what's going to look like for us? What can we do? How can we make it efficient? Led to data dashboard version 1, but I wanted to keep the team small because I knew there was a lot of work to be done, and the more people get around the table sometimes, the more off target you can get, so we kept small. Our principal then got on board, so I started it with a need. Our principal came on board, liked the work that was being done. Ended up that principal left, so I couldn't continue to focus on it at that point. Came back to it when Steve got on board and got, again, the right people at the table to do the work, and we each took portions of it, had a clear direction of where we wanted to go, and we just set regular meetings, knew what we wanted to do and where we needed to get, and continued to evolve the process. That's why you have those couple different versions and different tiers and things that we added year after year because we didn't get it right the first time. But the need was exactly what we said: quick, focused, and accountability. We need to follow through for our students, and we need to provide an equitable environment for them to learn.
So that really answered a lot of questions for the different people at the table. It was Ryan and I and one of our guidance counselors when we really went at it. I think our psych and our social worker were frustrated because the APs were always tied down in doing discipline. So I think they were a little frustrated with us. We were a little frustrated because when we came to the table, it was an hour and a half or 2 hours, and maybe only 30 minutes at the most would pertain to us. So I think everyone came to the table knowing that it needed to change, and so the small group went off and attacked it. I took it on as my PDP for my administrator license, so I just ran with it, and I guess it was just real fortunate that we've got a collaborative group that was willing to jump in and try it. And again, because we started small, initially, we had a lot of success with it early. Our meetings went from an hour and a half to 2 hours down to about 30 minutes per team. And I think everyone appreciated it. Everyone loved the conversations that we were having about kids and the subsequent follow-up conversations we were having about how kids' needs were being met and that they were improving. And it only took about 2 meetings and everyone was all on board.
And when you talk about modeling for teachers and you talk about ownership of students, this process in of itself, if you go back and take a look at that, there's 160 different contacts and conversations and follow-throughs with students that occurred. And that lends a credibility to you as a school of what's important for you, that it's about the kids and their success. So our staff sees that, and we have that to model and talk about, saying, here's what we're trying to do for students. I know you guys are on board with that, but it's a wholesale effort as an entire building.
Thank you. We have another question in here about interventions. So I know that you have a continuum of supports, and that you have different interventions that meet different needs. The question is about, have you found that you have any particular interventions that have been shown to be most impactful for students that you could recommend or suggest that this would be a good place to start?
Well, so our first and most impactful intervention would be during our academic options time, or our AO time that I spoke to, and it would be the Tier 2 support of math and reading focus. We have a half-hour time in our schedule, 4 days a week, that freshman students specifically who are identified being below college and career readiness, go to either a math or reading small group intervention between 6 and 10 students per group with a teacher, hopefully in that subject area, but not always exactly. We do utilize computer programs that we pay for. We utilize Achieve 3000 for our reading, and we utilize ALEX for our math. And those two programs gave teachers a base and a platform to deliver intervention. I would say our most success has been through Achieve. Our teachers do a great job of utilizing Achieve the way it's supposed to, Achieve 3000. It is an expensive program, but one that has been worth it. The district has paid for it. However, next year I will be paying for it out of our school site budget because of the success that we have had. To take a look at the success, there is a graphic that I didn't put up that was really pretty indicative of what we've done. It was basically a spring-to-spring comparison of our MAP scores over the past 5 years, a 5-year trend. 5 years ago, prior to even conversations about this, our composite score for our freshman class in reading was in the 222. And that trend line every year goes up and up and up to last year and this year, where we've been, as a composite average for our freshman class, exactly meeting the college and career readiness benchmark of well, actually it was 234 in MAP. We're at a 234 last year and a 234 this year as a composite, but I believe the benchmark went down. It's only a 230 or 231 now for MAP. But that's where our average is, and so we've stayed, our trend has gone up because of the interventions specifically during AO that has targeted our students below CCR. Math has also gone up, but reading, we're still working on our math. As I said, we have things to work on in our interaction with Alex and how effective it really is being.
Nice. You're hanging in there for a few more questions?
Absolutely.
All right, sweet. We have a question about, I know that behavior is not part of your early warning system, but there's a question about behavior interventions. Who's your interventionist? What types of intervention strategies are you using around behavior?
I guess I want to answer the first part of that. We didn't include behavior on here. It was my belief that a lot of our behavior stems from the fact that our students are too far behind in college and career readiness. So they don't understand the material, they don't understand the vocabulary that's being used. So, what option do they have? So we thought that the lack of academic progress was the cause for most of our behavior problems. So that's why we chose not to put that in.
Yes, and other things that we would do that are not on that list when I say anything or everything is on the table. So let's talk about what we do with special education students that maybe are EBD or focused, or regular students that are having mental health issues, or there's a reason or a trigger for the behavior. Those students are still individualized and talked about, but we'll do what we need to do for them. So, for example, we have a social behavioral group. We had a Y-Try group, we basically call it, to address specifically students that were not giving effort, that were having some behavioral problems as to what was going on in the classroom and why it was going on. So an additional support to their intervention would be a social discussion about that. For students with specific behaviors, they have specific behavioral plans, and we have created through our special education department social behavioral intervention that happens during our AO time and throughout the day. So we've created the courses specifically to address those behaviors. We've also had a grief group for students who have lost loved ones and some of the triggers that that's brought. And our mental health piece, I think, is a struggle for many schools. We've individualized it, and we've been on board with any means possible. But I think we're, as a district and a school, looking at a wholesale approach and changing the roles of our psychs and looking at an entire system. So that is kind of some of the areas that how we focused on behavior or some other things that trigger behaviors.
Thank you. Couple more questions. Can you go back and talk again about your SST process that you used to have a group of, just kind of talk about who sits on those teams and how you organize that SST process?
Well, right now, what it used to be was all of our school counselors, our school psychologist, our school social worker, and all of our principals. We didn't have anybody else at the table. That's probably an evolvement for us. We didn't have a special education person or a regular education teacher at the table, and we still don't. And that's something that is in discussions. But that's who has been at the table, and our process used to be what Steve kind of described at first, where we just kind of who's in crisis and what are we going to do about it. Where now we sit down, we go to the forum. I'm the one who leads that process. We also have our district person is now sitting in with us as well in providing feedback for us, but basically look at our last week's, and the form that is created is shared with everybody. So throughout the course of the week, we know that names pop up, we hear names, we hear things, we have encounters with students. Our student services team and APs go to that form and they enter the student's name into the form. So when we sit down on our SST time, there are names in there, but the SST time, the first about 20 minutes, is allocated for discussing last week's students. So that's the follow through and the accountability. So we take a look at our box of weekly follow up and we see who's doing what and how did the accountability go, what's happening, and then we talk about next steps with that student. And then we talk about new students, and there's a time to enter those, and we actually enter them on the spot or re-enter them if they were entered during the week, so we can get the data and we can have the discussion about the why and the how. So we wanted to make it easy that during the week you just put the name in there in the form, and when we come to the table for SST, we look at the names and then we dive in deeper as an SST team. And then we have our accountability, we leave for the week, we come back next week and we do the same process again, and I'm the one that drives that process right now. And the RTI process happens at specific grading periods throughout the course of the year. Every 6 weeks, we look to run the script. To be honest, sometimes it goes a little longer than we want it to, but we run it. And then right now, the associate principals are responsible for getting the meeting time together to sit down with our data team and bring all the information to the table. That we enter it in the same form, and we go out, and when we come back again, we have the accountability of what do we do with those students.
Excellent. We have another question about the sophomores and juniors and seniors. Did they also participate in the AO time that you talked about? And I guess that's the question. What do they do during that time, 4 days a week?
Yes, we had our sophomores specifically participate in our AO, and they are, I guess they've had more limited success as they've gotten a year older. Their attendance has waned from that. That's kind of an area of focus for ours. It is in the morning. It is a class that we require, but students continue to battle with our sophomores specifically. We have the other offerings we have for our juniors and seniors are our quest room is open for work completion. Teachers are accessible during that time, so part of our teachers provide intervention, and then the other half of our teachers are available for students to come in. They can go get peer tutoring at that time. They can be a peer tutor themselves, or we have an ACT prep program that we also offer. We have music enrichment that happens during that half-hour time, and then other creative pieces that year-to-year teachers can propose or do whatever. We're talking about next year having some AP test prep specifically with some of our AP teachers. So, and along with the ACT prep we already offer. So that is what our upperclassmen do, but as of right now, we don't. What we're doing with our upperclassmen is during the day, we're continuing to look at our FTEs, and we're offering intervention, a strategic reading class, and a math intervention to help our upper level students who are not at grade level. So our hope is, because we put so much stock in our freshmen, is to catch them in that net as freshmen, set the table for a positive moving forward, and then plug them in as needed sophomore, junior, and senior year. But to be very honest, sophomore year is a concern for us, and we're going to put more efforts there moving forward.
Thank you. I'm just going to ask Janine if I sent out a response to her question to her directly, so I'm just going to ask her to just chat back if she got that answer. Ryan and Steve, just so you know, the spreadsheet, if you click on the link to the spreadsheet, it's asking for access, so you might want to just change the preferences on that. Beautiful. Thank you.
Very welcome.
Thank you so much. Mm-hmm. So we'll, I'm going to grab the screen back. I wanted to share just a couple of other resources around early warning systems. One of the questions around, here we go. So there's some questions about buy-in and specifics here. I wanted to share with you just a couple of other resources, and again, these links are all available on that resource page. That Wisconsin actually has done a lot of work. Jared Knowles through DPI has done a lot of work around dropout early warning system using existing data at the state level. So that's a really good site to start with and look at what the local risk indicators are for the state as opposed to national ones. And they have some good guiding pieces there as well. The concept of early warning systems in education really came out of the National High School Center, which was developed by the American Institute for Research. And now they have a whole website devoted to that. So if you go to earlywarningsystems.org, there are handbooks and implementation guides. You can access an early warning system that's available to you at no cost. They have a number of resources on college career readiness, so that might be a good place for you to dive into. This year, the Institute for Educational Sciences and the Regional Education Lab at Northwest has developed an early warning systems learning series with a set of webinars around things like who should sit on your team and how do you define roles and what does that look like at the district level to support an early warning system. So a really interesting series that started this spring and will extend into fall with topics like how do you support English learners, for instance, within an early warning system. So really starting to get into some great in-depth conversations. The fourth piece on here is for those of you who are starting to think about equitable systems of and combining that with an early warning system. The Steinhardt Technical Assistance Center for Disproportionality has a nice set of guidelines for a monthly calendar if you're using an early warning system, some questions that you can start to build into your conversations so you can start to address some of those issues around disproportionality. And finally, the last resource that we're sharing here is a video from PBS Frontline called The Middle School Moment. And if you're looking for a way to develop ownership within your school, it's a really powerful video that shows the difference that an early warning system made for a middle school student. Her name is Omarina, and showed how this student had some really tough challenges facing her, but the data kind of spoke for itself and allowed her to get access to things that perhaps she would have slipped through the cracks before. And she's doing exceptionally well now. So it's a really powerful story about how something as technical as an early warning system can really make a difference in the lives of kids. So I want to thank everyone for attending today. Steve and Ryan in particular, thank you so much for taking the time to put this together and to share your story. So much thought and work behind this as you keep evolving. It's really exciting work, so thank you so much. I ask that our attendees, one of the best gifts we can give somebody is great feedback. So there's a 1-question survey as soon as you log out of this webinar that I'd ask you to complete so we can send that off to our presenters. And also I'm going to leave this on the screen so that if you want to jot down anybody's email address and follow up. Ryan or Steve, any parting words before we head out?
Just thanks for the opportunity. If anyone has any ideas for us, boy, please reach out to us and let us know. We've been fortunate to have a lot of people share with us. As Ryan said, we don't have all the answers. We just want to share our story, and hopefully people can learn from us. But if you've got ideas for us, please kick them our way.
Yeah, absolutely. As you guys continue to develop this, and I hope you take some of the pieces and do what works best for your school, and that you are someday doing something very similar, we can benefit from you, or let us know directly, or please share, I guess, as we have moving forward so we can learn from you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We'll hang out for a bit. Like, we've got about 2 more minutes, and if there's any questions in the chat box, we'll address those. Otherwise, thank you again for participating, and have a great day.